My parents gave my inheritance to my brother at Grandpa's funeral. Then his final letter was read. Have you ever sat in a room full of people and realized that your entire family had been planning to betray you? Because that's exactly what happened to me. And the worst part? It happened at my grandfather's funeral. The man who loved me more than anyone else in the world had barely been buried before my parents decided to take everything he left me and hand it to my brother. At least, that was their plan. What they didn't know was that Grandpa had anticipated exactly what they would do. And he left behind something that changed everything. My name is Sarah, and this story began on the saddest day of my life. My grandfather, Henry, passed away at 83 years old. He wasn't just my grandfather. He was my best friend. Growing up, he was the one person who always believed in me. While my parents focused all their attention on my younger brother, Michael, Grandpa made sure I never felt invisible. He attended my school events. He celebrated my achievements. He listened when nobody else cared. And unlike my parents, he never treated me as if I mattered less. My parents had always favored Michael. Nobody in the family even pretended otherwise. Michael could do no wrong. If he made a mistake, someone else was blamed. If he succeeded, he was treated like a genius. Meanwhile, I worked twice as hard for half the recognition. It hurt when I was younger, but eventually I accepted it. I stopped trying to earn their approval. Instead, I focused on building my own life. I became an accountant, bought a small house, built a stable career. Meanwhile, Michael bounced between business ideas. Most of them failed, yet somehow my parents continued funding him. Every time he needed money, they found a way to help. Every time he made a bad decision, they rescued him. Grandpa hated it. More than once, I heard him warn them. You're not helping him. You're enabling him. They never listened. Then Grandpa got sick. At first, it was minor health issues. But within a year, things became serious. I spent as much time with him as possible, driving him to appointments, helping around the house, keeping him company. Not because I expected anything in return, because I loved him. During one of our last conversations, he said something strange. He looked at me and smiled. Sarah, when I'm gone, don't let anyone convince you that you don't deserve what's yours. At the time, I didn't understand what he meant. A few weeks later, he passed away peacefully in his sleep. The funeral was heartbreaking. Hundreds of people attended. Former employees, friends, neighbors, family members. Everyone had a story about Grandpa's kindness. After the service, our family gathered at my parents' house. That's when things took an unexpected turn. My father stood up and cleared his throat. I think it's time we discuss Grandpa's estate. I remember feeling uncomfortable. The man had been buried only hours earlier, yet my parents were already talking about money. Then my father looked directly at me. Your grandfather wasn't thinking clearly toward the end. I frowned. What are you talking about? My mother sighed dramatically. He made some decisions that aren't fair. My stomach tightened. Suddenly, I knew exactly where this conversation was heading. My father continued. Michael needs help more than you do. There it was. The same excuse they'd used my entire life. Michael needs more. Michael deserves more. Michael comes first. Asked what Grandpa's will actually said. Nobody answered immediately. That was my first clue something was wrong. Finally, Michael spoke. Grandpa left part of his investment portfolio to you. Part? I already knew Grandpa had investments, but I'd never asked questions about them. Then Michael added something that made my blood boil. We think it would be better if you signed it over. The room went silent. I stared at him. You want me to give away my inheritance? My mother folded her arms. Your brother is struggling. My father nodded. Family helps family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Grandpa hadn't even been gone for a full day, and they were already trying to take what he'd left me. I refused immediately. The reaction was instant. My mother accused me of being selfish. My father called me ungrateful. Michael claimed I was tearing the family apart. The irony was unbelievable. They wanted to steal my inheritance, yet somehow I was the villain. I left before the argument got worse. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. The next morning, I received a call from Grandpa's attorney. He asked me to come to his office. Immediately, when I arrived, he handed me a sealed envelope. My name was written on the front in Grandpa's handwriting. The attorney smiled. Your grandfather instructed me to give this to you after the funeral. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter. But it wasn't just any letter. It was the most important thing Grandpa ever left behind. The letter began simply. Dear Sarah, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And it probably means your parents are already trying to convince you to give something away. I froze. My heart started pounding. How could he have known? Then I kept reading. Unfortunately, I've watched this family long enough to know exactly what will happen. Tears filled my eyes. Every word felt like he was sitting beside me. The letter continued. Your parents spent years protecting Michael from the consequences of his choices. Eventually, they began believing that everyone else should sacrifice for him too. That was exactly what had happened. Then came the revelation that changed everything. Grandpa hadn't simply left me part of his investments. He had left me the majority ownership of a commercial property portfolio he had spent decades building. Properties worth several $1,000,000. I nearly dropped the letter. I had no idea. None. Apparently, Grandpa had intentionally kept the details private. He didn't trust certain family members. And after reading the next paragraph, I understood why. Michael knows about the properties, Grandpa wrote. He's known for over a year. My stomach dropped. The letter explained that Michael had repeatedly asked Grandpa to transfer ownership to him. When Grandpa refused, Michael became angry. Then my parents got involved. They spent months pressuring Grandpa to change his will. He refused every time. Suddenly, everything made sense. The pressure, the guilt, the funeral conversation. They already knew what was at stake. And they wanted it. But Grandpa wasn't finished. Near the end of the letter, he revealed something nobody expected. Months earlier, he had recorded several conversations with Michael and my parents. Conversations discussing ways to pressure me into surrendering the inheritance. The recordings were stored with his attorney. I looked up in shock. The attorney nodded. They're real. I listened to them, and what I heard broke my heart. My parents openly discussed convincing me that I didn't deserve the inheritance. Michael repeatedly called me easy to manipulate. At one point, he literally laughed while talking about taking control of the properties. I couldn't believe it. The betrayal felt overwhelming. But for the first time, I had proof. 3 days later, the entire family gathered for the official reading of the will. Everyone expected a routine meeting. Instead, it became the day the truth came out. The attorney began reading Grandpa's final wishes. As expected, I inherited the property portfolio. Immediately, my father interrupted. He claimed Grandpa had been manipulated. My mother argued the inheritance should be shared. Michael demanded a review. The attorney calmly listened. Then he said something nobody expected. Mr. Henry anticipated this reaction. The room fell silent. Then he played the recordings. Every lie, every scheme, every conversation, playing through the speakers for everyone to hear. My parents looked horrified. Michael turned pale. Nobody could deny anything. The evidence came directly from Grandpa himself. When the recordings ended, silence filled the room. Several relatives stared at my parents in disbelief. Others simply shook their heads. For years, many suspected favoritism. Now they finally understood how far it had gone. My father stood up and stormed out. My mother followed shortly after. Michael remained seated, looking defeated. For the first time in his life, nobody was rescuing him. Nobody was protecting him. Nobody was making excuses. The truth was finally visible. Over the following months, relationships changed. Some family members apologized for staying silent. Others distanced themselves from my parents entirely. As for Michael, he eventually reached out. Not for money, not for favors. For an apology. A real one. It didn't erase the past, but it mattered. Today, the properties remain exactly where Grandpa intended. The income they generate has allowed me to expand my business and create opportunities for others. More importantly, they serve as a reminder that Grandpa saw me. believed in me, and protected me even after he was gone. If there's one lesson I learned, it's this. The people who truly love you don't just support you when they're alive. Sometimes they find a way to protect you long after they're gone. And when my parents tried to give my inheritance to my brother at Grandpa's funeral, they thought they had already won. What they didn't know was that Grandpa had the final word. And his final letter changed everything.